Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar From Traditional to Decentralized, Mastering Clinical Trials. This is the second of many episodes in the series called Research Your Life. Here we bring together experts and thought leaders to discuss the hottest topics in research fields. This is an exciting time in the world of clinical research as organizations are beginning to embrace the potential of digitalization. Decentralized studies provide organizations with a number of benefits, including increased efficiency, cost savings, and improved participant engagement. We have an amazing lineup of speakers ready to share this topic in depth and share their experiences along the way. Welcome, Laura and Robert. Before I officially present you our speakers and experts today, a couple of quick housekeeping items. You're all in listen-in mode, so you don't have to worry about any background noise. If you want to ask a question, we have dedicated time at the end of the webinar, but you'll see in the Zoom bar below the Q&A feature. Feel free to add your questions as they come up. If we see that some more of the clarifying questions, we'll answer it as we go. If not, we'll answer all of your questions in the end, but so you don't lose track of your questions, feel free to add them as soon as they come up to mind. And in case you have to drop off earlier or you want to share this session with a colleague later today, I will be sending out the recording of the webinar with you as soon as the webinar is over. So now let me present our speakers. As an account manager at Climedo, Laura Dosch accompanies customers from the medical device and pharmaceutical sectors on their way to the successful digitalization of their clinical trials. She advises companies on the use of Climedo's modular, decentralized, and patient-centric solutions. Welcome to the webinar, Laura.
Thanks, Julia.
Robert Rotloff has over a decade of experience in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry and has contributed to several publications in the clinical regulatory research domain. As Director of Product Development at Research Solutions and founder of PureDatas, Robert is a strong supporter of the open innovation approach and curious about digitalization and artificial intelligence solutions. Welcome, Robert.
Hello, everybody.
And I am Julia Heeson, the Senior Growth Marketing Manager here at Research Solutions, and I'll be your moderator of today's webinar. Before we dive into the topic, a little bit about Research Solutions, the company behind Research Your Life, if you're not familiar yet. Founded in 2006, Research Solutions provides solutions that simplify and streamline how organizations discover, acquire, and manage scientific articles and data. More than 70% of the world's top pharmaceutical companies, emerging life science firms, and other R&D-driven companies rely on us for one-click access to scientific literature. And some of you may or may not be familiar with one of our products, PureDatas, an intelligent systematic review engine for confident regulatory decision-making. Now, with that being said, handing it over to you, Robert, to kick us off.
Sure. So, could you move to the next slide, please, Julia?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so we are starting here with a first poll question. So we would like to know what your industry is. So in which area are you working right now, so that we get to know you a little bit. So the options are pharmaceutical industry, medtech industry, biotech, chemical, clinical research organizations, or healthcare.
Awesome. I see quite a lot of votes coming in. Thanks for adding your industry in here, everyone. Okay, last chance, add your vote. Okay, I'll end the poll. Let's look at the results.
Yeah, so we have quite a mixed audience. So pharmaceutical industry is leading here together with healthcare, but also medtech and biotech and CROs are also in the audience. So that's perfect. Thanks. Yeah, next time we need to also target maybe the chemical industry, but yeah, maybe they are not doing so many clinical trials. Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I want to kick that off. So first of all, I want to give you a broad overview of the concept of decentralized clinical trials. So this is a definition of the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, CTTI. So here they defined decentralized clinical trials as studies where some or all study assessments or visit for the patients are conducted in locations other than the investigator site, so other than the hospital or at the clinical site. And any or all of the following DCT elements are available. So telemonitoring, televisits, or mobile local healthcare providers, and also local labs, remote labs, and at-home testing, imaging centers, and home delivery of the investigational product. So these are key elements of decentralized clinical trials, and we also find synonyms for decentralized clinical trials like digital clinical trials, virtual trials, remote trials, or siteless trials. So this is a broad definition, and there's a continuum between really the traditional trials, which are 100% in the doctor's office or in the hospitals, or a fully digitized trial and decentralized trial, like we have some of them today. All right, next slide, please, Julia. And the key feature of decentralized clinical trials are the patient centricity. So all of those elements, so the data which is collected remotely or drugs sent to the patients, community sites and mobile clinical sites, and also the local diagnostics gave the patients more flexibility and optionality, which is then in the end leading to a patient-centric trials and patient-focused trials. So this is from more from a patient perspective. So the trials get more pragmatic. So that is also a key feature of a decentralized clinical trials. So they are more pragmatic, so that for the patient it feels, and also for the doctor, it feels more like the routine care system, and not like the gold standard, the randomized clinical trial, which is really something more artificial. So that is so they will really focus on the patient, and some of the patients are really like that, because visiting trial sites, that is a lot of effort for some patients, and it's saving also time for the clinical trial site and also for the patients. Yeah, so if we can move to the next slide. So here we see the potential benefits of decentralized clinical trials. First of all, at least in the pharmaceutical industry, but also in the medtech industry, we have an issue with getting all the patients in time in the study. So this will lead to longer recruitment times, and therefore to longer trial times. So decentralized clinical trials will lead potentially to faster trial participant recruitment, so higher recruitment rates of patients, then improved trial participation. So that leads to higher patient retention in the trials. So patients are not get lost within the trial because they do not like the trial process, and there's too much time involved for them. So they will hopefully get longer staying in the trial. And there's more convenience and comfort for the participants in the trial. And this all leads to an increased participant diversity, and also bigger trial cohorts. So there are many more people can join the trials because they are remote. So that feels also better for the patients. Mm-hmm. And before I hand over to Laura for the next maybe more in-depth discussion and slides, so we have a second poll here, which is dealing with, just need to see the question. Oh, so can you please, here we go. Have you had any experience today with decentralized virtual clinical trials? So not today, but in general.
So awesome to see when votes come in and you see like the bars go up and down as people add their votes. So lots of movement going on here. Thanks, everyone. Okay, last chance. Awesome. Ending the poll now. Let's see the results.
All right, so we have 60% have no any experience with the decentralized clinical trials. 20% say yes, and some of you have very little experience. So perfectly that you have joined the webinar. So let's I'll hand over to Laura. So please, your stage.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for the insights. Really interesting to see who's in the audience. Let me quickly share my screen first. You should be able to see it now, I hope. So, yes, great. Thanks so much, Julia, first of all, for the introduction. And also thanks, Robert, for giving us already a great overview of actually what DCT means. I'm really happy to be here and to give you some more insights into modern clinical trials and also decentralized elements. And what I want to do today is I'm going to dig deeper into the topic of this future of clinical trials and how the technology and digital solutions are creating an alternative and a decentralized approach to conducting a clinical trial, in contrast to those older traditional clinical trials, some of which are still conducted on paper, what I've recently experienced again. So let's start maybe with a quick example. So I want you to imagine you are, for example, a patient and you're facing knee osteoarthritis, which is a progressive cartilage degradation in the knee. So you're facing a lot of pain. You're facing pain when you're walking downstairs, for example. You feel pain when you are just lying on the couch or sitting down, and you're also feeling pain during the night. These painful and symptom-free phases are a little alternating, but you're really in a lot of pain. So what you do now is you decide you want to participate in a clinical trial and to find, for example, a medication that can help you with that pain. So how does that look like in a traditional setting? So how does this trial work? Usually for the recruitment, you have to go to the site for first contact, for some screening with a doctor, for getting some information. The problem is this responsible site that conducts the trial and collects the data is maybe by car, let's say 40 minutes away. So the study design also says that you have to go to this site at least like 9 times in the next year, and therefore you have to spend many hours traveling back and forth in the car. And also another time-consuming factor is that you're sitting in the waiting room at the doctor's office for maybe 20 minutes, and then you'll go talk to the doctor, and afterwards you even have to do some more reporting, mostly on paper. So all of this is actually happening with you being in pain. And all of that is also time that you don't have to spend, for example, with your family, with your friends, or also trying to relax a bit. And sadly, this is a huge challenge for a lot of patients who are in pain, which leads to, as Robert said before, lower, for example, patient recruitment, lower patient retention, and also therefore longer study duration. So what we've seen in some other research is that, for example, 66% of study centers enroll fewer patients than planned. 30% of patients drop out of clinical trials, and 80% of traditional studies are not completed on time. And now the question is, how can we change that? And that's where we dig deeper now into maybe the next scenario. Maybe imagine a world where you have the clinical trial at your fingertip. So you're again a patient with knee osteoarthritis, but you're sitting on the sofa at home, and you're scrolling through your phone, looking through maybe some medication on your own that could help with your pain. And you see a clinical trial or ad popping up for a clinical trial on your screen, on your phone. And now with those decentralized clinical trials, you can have this study with you at anytime. For example, on your smartphone, you can participate from home or on your way to work or to any conference, and you don't have to go to the site for 9 times in the next 12 months anymore. So what we are doing is actually we're going away from this old physician-centric setting in clinical trials to a more patient-centric digitalized setting, as Robert also said earlier. And how this could look like, I want to share with you now. I want to show you now and give you an overview of how these decentralized clinical trials could look like in a modern ecosystem for clinical trials. And before I start with the ecosystem, you can see here, maybe again, a really quick overview on what we at Climedo are doing. So you have that in mind as well. So what we do is we offer a data management software platform for hybrid clinical trials and observational studies. And we work together with, for example, CROs and pharmaceutical companies, as well as with medical device companies and the German Federal Ministry of Health. And they all use our modular and secure solutions as interactive, responsive electronic data capturing, so an EDC system, including, for example, ECRF, ePro, eCOA, and then also these topics we're going to talk about today, for example, wearables and televisits. But yeah, how does this ecosystem look like? So in the middle of it all, you can see a cloud-based EDC platform, which is a decentrally accessible integrated platform with shapeable setup and German data security standards. And to enable patient-centered studies, we're improving the platform every day to connect all stakeholders of a clinical trial. So as you can see, we have the patients on the left, sites on the right, and the sponsors or CROs at the bottom of this ecosystem. So maybe let's start with the subjects or patients in this ecosystem. So what they can do is they can not only hand in, for example, quality of life data via ePros, so the electronic patient reported outcomes to the sponsors, but what they can do nowadays is also, for example, they're able to hand in real world data to the sites via wearables they are wearing in their everyday life. So for example, they can wear a smartwatch or some other sensors to collect the data. And what they can also do is schedule a televisit with a doctor at the site and use e-consent to enroll in a trial. Sites, on the other hand, can hand in objective data via ECRF, for example, to the sponsors, and the sponsors and the sites both can have insights into this flexible, adjustable KPI dashboards and real-time benchmarking. We'll dig deeper into all of those modules in a second. But one thing we're also working on right now is, for example, a tailored data sharing from sponsors with the patients who give them an overview of the data they have been sending out. And with this modern ecosystem, it is possible to start a trial, for example, within 4 weeks using out-of-the-box solutions, or also 10 weeks from contract signature to a first patient in, if you don't use like a ready setup solution, but if you also want to have some new innovative modules in the study as well. This ecosystem can seem a little overwhelming at first, which is why I brought another example for a patient-centered approach with me. And that's also what we're going to go through step by step now. So just a quick overview, and then we step into those modules. Is the patients in this ecosystem can have, as mentioned, an easy and remote enrollment with like smooth transition from recruitment to study participation and no transition losses. And they have a flexible trial participation from anywhere, wherever they want to participate, with a bring your own device approach. That means they can use, for example, their smartphone to participate in clinical trials. They can use the wearables and all of this without installing any application. And it's possible to send out automatic reminders via SMS or email with individual and direct links to surveys, use gamification, progress bars, badges, etc. But let's dig deeper into those modules right now, and let's start it off actually with the remote enrollment. So the whole patient journey in the clinical trial starts actually let's say with the recruitment, you can see an example on how that could look like on the left here on the slide. The recruitment campaign is usually done by the sponsors or partners. What we as Climedo help with is like after the recruiting, which is the second step here in this workflow. And after the patient is recruited, he receives a screening survey on his phone and some information material regarding the trial. He can then schedule a televisit with the doctor, receives some more information material, and also can use e-signature or also video identification for e-consent to be enrolled into the study. And the last step here, step 7, is also receiving the first ePro or scheduling an in-person visit with the doctor if necessary. So that would be going away a little from the decentralized clinical trial to more of a hybrid clinical trial. So that's the first workflow and the first steps into the patient journey. Going deeper into the topic of ePros, I actually have an example with me again. So if you have a smartphone with you, feel free to take out the phone and take a picture of this QR code. You should be able to see actually a screen where you have to give consent first. And then you see an exemplary survey for a pain relief clinical trial, including, for example, a quality of life questionnaire. You can also see again on the slide how it would look like for a patient on these pictures. But as you're doing this, or while you're clicking through the example, I mean, you can also have a deeper look into this maybe after the session once you took the picture. We've prepared actually another poll for you now. So the next question is, which aspects are particularly important to you in setting up clinical trials? And yes, we also have the answers here. It's also multiple choice this time. So the answers are patient-centric trial, fast study setup, low onboarding effort, cost-effective implementation, or use of modern technology.
Okay, so receiving some answers here. Okay, I think we've got a good amount of people put their answers in, so let's end the poll and see the results.
Okay, interesting. So first place is patient-centric trial and cost-effective implementation, which makes sense, which I've heard before. Yeah, not a really big surprise. And then all of the other answers are kind of up there. Fast study setup, low onboarding effort, use of modern technology, all around like 20 to 30, 38%. All right, interesting. Thanks for participating. But let's move on into this patient journey that I've been talking about. And now I would like to dive deeper. Also, as you said, patient centricity is really important for a lot of you and also for a lot of other companies that we're working with. And so I want to dive deeper into the possibilities of gamified reporting statistics. And how does this work, or how could it look? It is that you as a patient can track your own progress throughout the study. So you can actually collect badges, for example. You can see competitive ranking, including also other users and other peers who are enrolled in this clinical trial. And also what I want to mention, we did not come up with that all by ourselves. It is all based on some research and literature. For example, DC and Ryan's self-determination theory. So feel free to also look that up later after the event. And I also said before, patients don't have to download an app to be enrolled in the clinical trials or to take part in clinical trials. So you might ask, how is this possible then for the patients to have kind of this overview? So what we do is we use a web progressive app or a progressive web app where patients have kind of their own platform. And what we use is we use individual links or those individual QR codes, and we send them to the patients. And if they click on the link, they have this kind of progressive web app view where it looks like they're using an app, but it's not really an app. And what they can do is to see the progress bars, get an overview on current weeks reporting, and also see open tasks, like if they have to fulfill or fill in another survey the next day, if they forgot to fill in the survey yesterday, etc. And one more module I want to take a closer look into is also patient facing. It is the patient facing analytics via, for example, the data sharing with patients, benchmarking and progression that I've been talking about earlier as well. So we actually built this module together with one of our pharmaceutical customers because they needed it for their trial, which is why we came up together in this process of sharing experiences and ideas on how to make it even easier for the patients, but also, of course, for the sites and for the sponsors to all like participate in this clinical trial. And what you can do as a sponsor now or as a site is you can enhance the patient centricity by being transparent on the shareable information and also foster patients' understanding of their treatment and success and health situation. And you therefore support patients' engagement through optional self-monitoring and staying updated on personal health data by visualizing the progress. So with a benchmarking, for example, you can actually compare a patient with the peer group or the cohort. So you have patient X, Y, Z, and you can see his actually the health status compared to the health status of the whole cohort or the peer group. And the progression module on the right-hand side helps you to show, for example, the patient's progression of his health status. So for example, the change in blood pressure over or while the study is being conducted. So you have these real-time data visualizations and the monitoring with you at all time. Again, as mentioned before, we didn't come up with all of that by ourselves. I don't want to go into detail now here, but just for you, feel free to look up this literature as well, that all of these modules are also based on, and have a deeper look into that after the webinar. I think there's a recording and maybe we're also going to send out the slides, so feel free to dig into that a little deeper. And with that, I want to go to the next question, actually. I've been talking for quite some time. So the next question is, what are your biggest challenges in clinical trials? And it's again a multiple choice question. Is it maybe lack of staff, regulatory problems, delays, the patient recruitment, high costs, patient retention, or other? I don't know if you click other, maybe you can also write in the chat, Julia, maybe you have some.
Yeah, if it's other, feel free to send us what it is in the chat. We'd of course love to know. Okay. We'll see responses coming in. Thanks everyone for filling out all these polls. It's always so good to really know, yeah, what do you think, what your current situation is. Okay, I think we're good to share the poll. Let's see.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so the winner is delays in that round here, followed by patient recruitment and patient retention, lack of staff, high costs, regulatory problems. Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's interesting to see because delays haven't been on the top of the list so far when we did some surveys. But patient recruitment, patient retention, lack of staff, and high costs are always, of course, a big challenge, which we have seen so far as well in some clinical trials. All right, thank you so much. Maybe something that we could help with those challenges is to show you also some use cases or give you some idea actually how to overcome these challenges. And I've brought, I think, 3 examples with me today. And the first example is actually a prospective non-interventional multicentric study containing 5 visits with 2,000 patients in over 300 sites. And the study has been conducted over 24 months. And what they did is actually they used the EDC system, including ECRFs, the SAA module and query management, as well as the ePro for remote monitoring in a cardiovascular study. And what we did is we were able to achieve actually this dropout rate below 1% due to this remote quality of life and the ePro reportings. And also, as I said before, the configuration in this case only took 4 weeks because of these modular hands-on designs. And we also achieved a high data quality through consistent data collection. This example was actually also where we came up with some innovative ideas in conducting trial with some new modules that could actually help with increasing the patient retention and the motivation of the trial participants. Jumping into the next use case, this one actually has been a fully decentralized clinical trial or digitalized clinical trial with one of our customers, CRO Analyze and Realize. That was a fully virtual assessment of benefits and tolerability of a dietary supplement in 300 study participants within one virtual site. Containing sleep complaints via these daily ePro questionnaires again. And also here we achieved a 99% compliance rate of the ePro. And as I said, the execution was 100% virtual, which is not possible in a lot of studies. We've been talking to a lot of companies and they say, sometimes or usually the patient has to go to a doctor to be screened by the doctor at least once in a clinical trial, which of course makes totally sense. And then we talk about those hybrid clinical trials and not really decentralized trials. I've also been at a conference last week where I listened to a presentation and one of the speakers said he doesn't like the term of decentralized clinical trials. He prefers this term of digitalized clinical trials, as Robert told us as a synonym before as well. So yeah, something to think about when you are talking about DCTs, maybe also in the future. And the last use case I want to show you is an example. It's an interventional phase 4 clinical trial on a respiratory drug with another CRO that we conducted with Pharmalog. And the goal here was to have a real-time analysis of study data and capturing patients' health status and the medication adherence through monitoring again by ePro entries on a daily basis with more than 40 sites. 450 participants, and the timeline of 8 months. So a little shorter timeline than the others, but the most valued outcomes here were also that the real-time analysis through like smart views and exports of filtered data was a great example of also getting less SDV on site through direct patient inputs and an increased compliance with these automatic reminders that can be sent out, as well as the bring your own device approach. So the patients can use just their smartphone and take part in the clinical trial, as I said, maybe from the couch from home. And to close with my presentation, I actually wanted to show you some outcomes of a survey that we've conducted together with TrialFlow. It's really interesting to see that we had those polls here in this setting with you as participants, but we also questioned sites and CROs and sponsors about the future of clinical trials last year. And yeah, now I would like to focus more on the sponsors and CRO side, and not on the sites. But what we did here, it's also just some examples. I think it's 3 questions. But what we ask, for example, we ask about the status quo on the usage of decentralized elements in clinical trials. And respondents were already using various digital applications such as ePro, informational videos, and wearables and telemedicine. So roughly 44% use telemedicine and wearables, 41% ePro and some videos. And these elements can actually also be split up in elements to gather data. So for example, via ePro, EHR or wearables, and elements that are more operational. So these informational videos, e-consent, flying nurses, etc. So it's also a nice overview and a little comparison to what you said before, that a lot of you don't have any experience with decentralized elements here. In this case, a lot of respondents already had some experience with that. And another question that we asked was about the proportion of patients the sponsors and CROs reach via digital channels. And the results were very clear here. Half of the sponsors don't reach patients at all via digital channels yet, and just over 1/10 reach 80% of their patients via digital channels, which potentially leaves a gap between where the patients already have their attention to, like they are already surrounded by their smartphones, for example, and there's a gap between that and where the sponsors recruit, which leaves maybe some room for the sponsors to catch up in this regard. And the last question I want to focus on is, we also asked about the future potential of decentralized clinical trials, and the most frequently chosen one was the electronic document management with roughly 67%. And part of this EDM is, for example, also the e-consent, digital interfaces, and telemedicine, which are all subgroups. And another outcome here is that a low number of participants selected the ePro, which can mean that the ePro is actually no longer the newest technology in the market. It has been already used a lot and is therefore not longer a really huge future topic because it has already arrived on the market. So we really hope that all of these other technologies that I've been talking about the last half an hour can also arrive on the market, as well as the ePro. And yeah, I hope I could give you some new and interesting insights on this topic of future clinical trials. And with that, I just want to say thanks so much for the attention, and I'm looking forward to questions and the discussion.
Yes, thank you so much, Laura. That was such an insightful topic and interesting survey results as well. Thank you so much for sharing. Awesome. So I saw that we already got a handful of questions coming in, so excited to get started on the live Q&A. Before we do so, though, if you wouldn't mind, Laura, clicking to the next slide. Yeah, so before we move on to the Q&A, I'd like to encourage you to visit our website, and if you're interested, book a demo with one of our specialists to get an up-close look at Curatus, the product I mentioned in the beginning. We offer a free trial so you can experience the power of our solutions firsthand, as I'm adding the link in the chat as we speak right now. If you want, head over there, find further information, and yeah, ask us about that free trial, and we're happy to enable it for you. Awesome. Okay, let's get started. Questions. I saw the first one is, do you have numbers on decentralized clinical trial tools or initiatives in oncology field?
Yeah, so actually we do have some projects as well in the field of oncology. Actually also right now we have a project where we're conducting a registry study, and in these registry studies it's actually concerning prostate cancer, bladder cancer, and breast cancer. And what we did there is actually using, for example, ePro in real-world evidence to conduct these clinical trials and to get data from retrospective, also prospective sites, and have this data all in this registry. And we use definitely some ePROs there, also the variables. But what we can definitely do, I think Nora asked the question, if you're interested in also getting another use case, feel free to reach out, and I can send you another use case with some more numbers on this topic in a setting, so you can also read through it and have a look at that.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura. And yes, definitely feel free to reach out for further information. The next question that came in is, how can organizations ensure they comply with regulations when running a study remotely?
Mm-hmm. I don't know, Robert, do you want to go ahead, or should I start maybe and you can jump in?
Yeah. So if I understand the question correctly, so there are a lot of recommendation papers. I think at least in Europe, so there's a diversity of regulation because of the different countries. But there's a nice recommendation paper which came out, I think, in the COVID crisis. So because that was also a game changer, I think, for decentralized clinical trials, where the patient should, so the study patient should keep away from the hospitals and also the trial clinical research associates. So that was really the game changer. And the EMA, so the European Medical Agency, published a recommendation paper on decentralized elements in clinical trials. So I can provide the link in the chat. But again, so we have a lot of country-based regulations. So this depends based on the country, the local regulations, and this is nicely prepared in this recommendation paper. So there's an overview, what is allowed in which country, and how can you set up your decentralized clinical trials from sponsors and clinical research organizations. So I will provide the link in the chat.
Amazing. Thank you, Robert,
So
for adding that.
I need to search for that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Laura, anything to add from your perspective?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Definitely, of course, it depends on the country, also where the clinical trial is being conducted. I mean, we're based in Munich here in Germany. We have lots and lots of clinical trials in Germany, and the regulations are pretty strict here. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's always great to read through some research literature. Reach out maybe to some consultancies who have experience in that regard. Also maybe CROs. As I've been mentioning, we're working with a lot of CROs to have this kind of network where they can help with, for example, the regulatory aspects or the study design. Always good to get some insights from the experts there.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Robert. I just saw an interesting question come in through the Q&A. How can organizations ensure that the app/UI experience is cross-platform and a bug-free experience for study participants? Working at the site level and depending upon the demographic, one of the most common issues is declining participant compliance due to bugs in UI or UX. Not sure, if Laura, Robert, you can speak to this. Otherwise, of course, we can defer to this and take it offline.
Yes. So I'm not really an expert in like the technology field of the UI UX. What I could definitely tell you, Umar, is maybe reach out again with a question. I would definitely forward it to our product team, because they are always working hard on, for example, APIs and really to make it work to ensure that the app, and as you said, these cross-platform experiences for study participants work. So yeah, maybe feel free to reach out again. I'll forward this question to the product team.
Yeah, so I think those UX, so user experience related questions will come up more and more, because we are going from this physician-centric to user-centric or patient-centric approach. So I think that's really a relevant question. So we are moving also here to an experience for the patient. So that is a major shift right now. And what we see is that, first of all, so those apps need to go to a compliance review and also to a user acceptance testing. But again, so you will see that when you launch the app for the patients, there will be some minor changes maybe needed. But then then again, we are in a regulated industry, so you need to approve maybe some major changes if you do that within the apps via your ethic committee or your local authorities. So that is also what then needs to be considered. You cannot just change the patient survey based on maybe bugs or some recommendations. So that is also what we need to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right on. Thank you. Awesome question so far. The next one is, you mentioned that it is possible to get a free trial of Curedatis. How long is the trial? And does Curedatis integrate with my current Article Galaxy account? Robert, you might be best to speak to this.
Yeah, so the Curedatis trial is right now, I think we scheduled it for 2 weeks if there's time for the customer to do that. And yeah, so integrated in Curedatis, we can integrate Article Galaxy, so the document delivery for full text articles. And so that's why it's fully integrated in Curedatis, if the user would like to have this document delivery part as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you're a customer of Article Galaxy, feel free to reach out either to your account manager, or if you don't know who that is, hit reply to the email that you received for the webinar, and I'll help you locate your account manager, and then we can speak about, showing you more about Curedatis and how we could add it to your account. Cool. Another question that I see here is, what advice would you give to organizations considering a remote clinical trial?
Do you want to start, Robert, or should I?
Maybe you can start. So that's more.
Yeah. So advice would I give is always, as I said also before, reach out and get into contact with people who have some experience in decentralized clinical trials as well. Try to read as much literature as possible. It's always good to have some understanding and what is out there and what you can do. And again, also always free to reach out to maybe get some tips, some recommendations on what to expect. It is something that is still new. It is something that has not been implemented 100% in clinical trials, sadly. So it's something new for everyone. But there are some people out there who already have some experience. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, so I can recommend these clinical trial transformation initiative, which I showed in the first slide. So they have a lot of material for virtual trials or for decentralized trials. So there are also, I think, working documents for those who are planning to add decentralized clinical trials. And maybe it's a good idea to look into clinicaltrials.gov for maybe protocols from other studies, which elements they have deployed in their clinical trials. So that would be also my advice or my tips for how they can set up decentralized clinical trials.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both. Looks like we've answered all questions. Last chance, everyone. If you have one question that you haven't added yet, we would still get to it if you add it right now. If not, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this webinar on decentralized clinical styles, trials, not styles, and trying to stay ahead of the curve with this. And thank you so much, Laura and Robert, for joining us as experts, as our panelists, sharing all this knowledge with us. For any follow-up questions that people may have, as Laura and Robert already shared, feel free to reach out either through the Climedo website, through our website. If you don't know where to go, hit to reply to the webinar emails that you've received, and I will guide you into the right direction and with the right person. Any follow-up questions are welcome. Oh, and talking of which, we did get one. I thought it was my last question. It was a thank you.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining.
And also maybe reach out via LinkedIn as well. It's always really easy to connect there and also share the network and some more experience and insights on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Yes. Go to Climedo on LinkedIn or Research Solutions, or look up Laura, Robert, or myself. And let's stay in touch. Thank you so much yet again, and have a great rest of your day, afternoon, wherever you're located. And talk to you soon.
Thank you, Julia.
Bye. Thanks.